Hey everybody, Derick from Culture Estate here, and welcome to the first episode of the Real Estate Experience podcast. Today I'm talking to Luis Leiva, the broker and CEO of Culture Estate. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thank you, Derick, for having me. And I'm not sure if you want to fill the audience in, but this is our second time?
Yeah, this is our second time. The first time was actually a complete fail.
Huge fail.
It was in slow motion and silent.
Yeah.
So
some people think this media stuff's easy, but it's actually not. It's very technical, especially when you don't have your camera guy on staff right there.
yeah, I know, right? This is why we need Dan the cameraman.
We always need your dad.
But so I want to start off by, I guess, asking you. I know a little bit about you because I work with you, but for the people who don't, tell us a little bit about Luis before real estate.
Luis before real estate? Well, I was just always been a hustler. That's been in my DNA since day one. I've never seen anything special about it. Some people now they kind of like ask me how I can work so hard or always just be on my grind. But I guess I saw my brothers and my dad. They were always working. They were never sitting on the couch and like waiting for something to happen. So I think that's where I got my momentum from. And as a kid, I was never like given everything on a silver platter. So if I wanted something, I literally had to work for it, to find a way to get it. It was never like, all right, like, you want a video game? Well, here's a video game. You want this? You had to do what you had to do. So real early on in my life, I realized that I had to do something that made money. And, I was always very sociable. I was always hanging out with my friends and playing sports and doing this and then doing that. And one day, by chance, I got asked to cut my friend's hair, and I had fun with it. It was a lot of fun, and I didn't do a half bad job. But that's how the whole barber life started, and I got real confident in doing that. And my second time around, I gave my friend a really bad haircut. So that's what actually triggered it. Because believe it or not, for me, it's negativity that fuels me more than positivity. Like if you reinforce me with I'm doing great, I'm gonna tell you, yeah, whatever, okay. But if you tell me like you suck and you're terrible and you're never gonna succeed, then I really want to do it. Then I definitely want to do it. So then that's where I guess where I started from. Someone told me I was a terrible barber and I cut hair really bad and I messed up my friend's hair. So I wanted to prove it to everybody that I wasn't.
Okay.
And I was gonna be the best. So at one point I felt like I was at the top of my industry. I opened up my own barbershop when I was 21 years old, something like that.
You're a year older than me.
Yeah,
Wow.
I was young. I was a kid, man, and I didn't know anything about business. That was my first time going into business on my own. Thankfully, I had not the financial support, but the emotional support of my family and my dad. And I went in and just learned everything the hard way. I made a lot of mistakes. I think I told you one time I ended up getting an $8,000 gas bill my first month in business, and it was due to the fact that there was a Subway a sandwich shop down the block from me, and somehow they had, because we were in the same strip mall, they had switched our meters around, and they made me pay for it. They said, if you don't pay for it, we're going to cut off your gas. So they were like, we'll reimburse you, don't worry. So I paid for it, and to this day I still haven't gotten that $8,000 back from PSE&G. If you guys are watching this, I'm still waiting for my money. But that was a terrible learning experience. There were times when I was like, what did I get myself into? I was making more money when I was working for someone else than now that I'm working for myself. I had to cover all my barber's appointments when they wouldn't show up. I was hustling backwards, working more, making less. Sometimes I didn't know how I was going to make the rent that month. Actually, towards the end, when I sold my barbershop, I was actually 2 months late on my rent because I didn't have the money. But I was selling my barbershop, so I was hoping that from that money, I was going to catch up on my rent and just be done with it.
Yeah.
Because I had it under contract, and it was supposed to close, and it didn't. Fast forward to like every deal in real estate now.
I know.
And it didn't close, so I guess that was my first lesson with that. So I had to go with another buyer, and I went with the second buyer. I got a lot less with the second buyer, and I was behind on my obligations. So I knew that wasn't the life I wanted to live, and I started off dead broke in real estate. I sold my barbershop so I could get into real estate. I had a friend who was doing it, and I wanted to get involved. And the first year, dude, I'm telling you, you guys are so lucky. I don't want to call you guys spoiled, but a lot of times I feel like you guys have it all. Like you really do. Like when I got started, we had to figure things out on our own. Like our broker wasn't like me. Like I didn't spend the time with us to train us and teach us. constant, meetings and things. Like, there was none of that. My first year, I barely made 20 grand, and that was just by luck, to be honest with you, because I really hadn't. I think I got one of my deals by picking up the phone at the office one day. It was just like a call in. And I knew that wasn't the right way to do it. And so we made a move and went to a different office, and that's when I started like picking different habits up from different people, and things started to click and make sense. And that's when I started making money in real estate. And ever since then, I've never looked back. I've always been in love with real estate. I had a couple moments where I tried to do other things. I quickly learned that being focused is the best thing in life. Just focus on one thing, and eventually, if you love it enough, eventually the money will roll in, and it has. Not that I brag about making money, but you want to be the best at something, and you want to help as many people along the way as possible, and then somehow everything seems to come full circle. Money comes right afterwards. So that's how I kind of, my background and how I got started into real estate. Obviously, that there's a lot of things that happen in between, then and now. But I'm just a regular guy. I'm a regular guy who I like to work hard. My work ethic is definitely up there with the best. So that's really myself in a nutshell.
Okay. Now, the hustle started for you really young. How you said you were 13, 14 when you
14.
started cutting hair.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't go back to the point where I bought a Polaroid and I started taking pictures and selling Polaroids as like a 7-year-old and washing my brothers and sisters' cars, but it's always been in me to like just find a way.
I find it crazy when I hear people talking about, I used to sell chocolate bars on the street or whatever it was, because in my case, I never did that. Like, I'm just being honest, I never did any of that. I never sold chocolate bars, I never cut hair for extra money. Like, I just played sports in high school. That's all I did, I just find it amazing to hear that. And now, you started young, you opened your own barbershop at 21, and how do you feel that, I guess, that failed business helped you in real estate? Because obviously I'm sure you learned from that PSE&G bill that you're still waiting for.
Everything.
But like, how, I guess, can you say the lessons that you learned from that applied into real estate?
Well, that's a great question, because unfortunately at that time, I was a really good student in school, but I wasn't able to go to college because of my immigration status in this country. I wasn't able to get any student loans or anything like that. And so getting a business degree was not on my agenda. It wasn't there. So I feel like everything happens for a purpose. Like, I didn't get that business degree, but I got firsthand experience that a lot of college kids don't have, they don't get. And they come out of college with a lot of debt, which I didn't have. I was broke, but at least I didn't have any debt. So that was a big advantage I feel that I had back then. But taking all of that into consideration and having that one business where it was a failed business does prepare you for the next business, the third business, the fourth business, because every time you learn something new, you learn something else. You learn about systems and accounting and about marketing and about leverage and all these things. So I definitely carry those lessons over to now, because I realized afterwards that, okay, well, if the average barbershop makes this much, your overhead should be that much. But I didn't do that. I just went in and I just took the nicest barbershop I could find, and then the overhead was so high that I wasn't making any money. So now going into any venture, you look at it the same way, whether you're buying a location for a real estate company or you're buying a house to flip. And so you got to look at your costs, your expenses. And I didn't do that, in the beginning. I just went on, my intuition, and it failed me. But that's one of the biggest lessons I took away. Other things I've learned from it were that you have to have good people working with you. I had the bad news bears of barbers back then. It was just like one was worse than the other. Not that they were bad in skills, but they were just they were the kind of guys that just go out all night and get hammered and not show up the next day. I mean, I drew the line the day that I found the cash register short, when someone literally knowing that I wasn't making money, and they went and took money from the cash register. That was the day that I was like, you know what, enough is enough. I'm done. And I just made a conscious decision, that day that, whatever loss I take, I don't care. Money doesn't make me happy. It's really the quality of your life that makes you happy. Cause, I learned at a young age that money comes and goes fast. I was making more money as a high school kid cutting hair than most of my teachers were. And, not many kids can say that. And I did it the legal way. I had a lot of friends that were doing it the wrong way, but thank God I was blessed with some skills, and I utilized them, and I think that's what all that stuff that's happened is carried forth to today, because obviously, like, you have to hire the right staff, the right people, and that's what fuels an organization. Before you know it, like, you'll find someone that does your job better than you, and that's a time when you have to look for what's the next step I can do for the company. What's the next big thing I can do for culture.
Okay. Now, another thing that you mentioned before was you had some time where you focused on other things. Like, what do you mean by other things?
Well, when I got into real estate, I excelled pretty quickly after I got into the right atmosphere. And then I noticed that, I took a liking to mortgages and numbers. I was I'm always very analytical with things. So I had opportunity to do both at the same time, which I did, and excelled in both. There was a month, I remember there was a month where I was top agent in my office, and I was also top loan officer in my brokerage, my origination shop. So people were looking at me like, how the hell did you do that? Like, how is it possible you could be, and I was okay. Like, I'm going to be honest with you, like, I was good at both, but I wasn't great at one. Just because I beat out my colleagues doesn't mean that it placed me anywhere near the top of my industry.
Yeah.
So what I figured out then was, like, balancing these two things, which I don't regret, because I learned a lot of things in the mortgage industry, things that I would have never been able to learn as a realtor. I learned a lot. I also had the opportunity at one point to become a sales manager, which gave me the first taste of, like, how it was to help other people to kind of, like, come up. So as a sales manager, you got to make sure your salespeople are taken care of, trained, that they're producing, and you got to put their needs before yours. So that was kind of like my first introduction to that, and I did it naturally. It wasn't ever forced. I never felt like obligated to do it. It just always came from my heart. So that's how I got started with that. And I didn't know that at that time. I felt like, a sales manager is kind of like, how would I say, it's like a thankless job in a way, because you don't make as much as you could if you were just an originator.
Yeah.
Because imagine if you didn't have to put out everybody else's fires, you can just concentrate more time on you making more money. And that was short-sighted, because that was teaching me all leadership skills.
Okay.
And then, I took that into consideration now that I'm, like, leading all these agents and all these people. I thank God that I had the opportunity. But what I also learned was that doing both was getting me nowhere fast. So once the recession hit, the meltdown, I figured out, things are bad everywhere, right? And I'm not really making that much money. And I even considered going back to cutting hair. It was just a bad time for everybody. So I figured out, okay, if I really want to boil this down, like, what is it that I would love to do even if I didn't make money? Because there wasn't any money being made. So I'm like, what can I do? So I said, you know what? I'm going to leave mortgages alone. They were going to start to regulate it like crazy. You're going to have to get new certifications and everything. I said, this is the writing on the wall. And they were like, there was like no money to be made anymore. It was everything was getting turned upside down. So I said, you know what? I'm more passionate about real estate. I always have been. So let me just go full force into that. So I did. I went back to real estate, forgot about mortgages, let the other guys handle that. And my business started to grow again. It started to grow. And then I got into investing as well. So I got into real estate investing, and I started doing that. I was able to, the first deal I did was with my parents. They put in some money, I put in some money, and we bought a house in Elizabeth, and we flipped that. We made some money, and we took that money, rolled it over into another property, and kept it going for a little while. And we had to do it that way because I wasn't able to do any hard money at that time. So hard money was really tough back then, believe it or not. Like, now you take it for granted, like, you get hard money loan anywhere. But if somebody came to me with a hard money deal, I always would say, that's not gonna close. That's not gonna, because it never used to close. It was just hard. It was just really tough. So fast forward, I got into that, and I stopped doing real estate because I said, why should I handle these clients who are a pain in the butt? I could just be flipping houses and making money that way. But what I didn't realize was that these closings happen every 6 months. They happen whenever you flip this property, especially if you're working with all your own money, like all your own cash. You're not leveraging 2 or 3 properties at the same time. So my electrician told me one day, he's like, what are you doing here? You should be, in the office making deals. And I'm like, yeah, but who's going to make sure the jobs get done right? I said, you got people for that. If you don't trust the people who are working for you, why are they working for you? So he had a point. And so, I went back into real estate, delegated all my construction work, and just made sure that, I had the right people working for me there. So that stuff got done. And as it got done, then I went on to just excelling in real estate because I focused. He's like, that's where you're going to get the next deal. So just be in the office, be grinding. So I did. I learned to delegate that. That's one of my first lessons in delegation was that. It was one of the hardest ones too because, you don't trust people. It's hard to trust people.
Yeah.
So I went and I just went full force into real estate. Short time after that, I was making good, really good commission. And then I had the idea to start my own real estate company because at that moment, the economy started improving a little bit. Things started to get a little bit better. So I said, you know what we're going to do now is I'm going to take all my, wisdom that I thought I had at the time and all the momentum I was having, I want to open my own shop. So I wrote it on this whiteboard on the wall. I'm going to open my own real estate company. So then a few weeks later, believe it or not, just a few weeks later, that's the power of like writing things down. Just a few weeks later, I found the right location. So I went and I opened my first real estate company with a friend of mine. And fast forward to today, I've been through 2 real estate companies, and then I opened up Culture Estate, which has been a progression. Everyone has been increasingly better. And I took everything I've learned from all the mistakes, all the ups and downs, like all my experiences in the last 15 years, and I just basically created this thing, and I condensed everything I've learned into a short period of time for you guys, so you guys don't have to go through the same things I did.
Yeah.
So I know it was a long answer, but
no, it's okay. It's okay. That's a good thing. But now, Culture's been around for a little over 2 years, almost 3.
Yeah.
Where did the name Culture come from?
Oh,
I don't think you've ever told me that.
I don't think you asked that on the last one. That's good. All right, so I had struggled with this for a while because when I first knew I had to open up my own real estate company, this last one, Culture Estate, I had premonitions that I was going to have to do it. So I had thought, what's a good name? And I'm usually really good with these things. Like,
yeah.
I've literally named businesses for friends that I'm like writer's block. I don't know what to say. So I'm really good with those things. But for some reason, I had the biggest this mental block ever. So what I did was I just left it alone. I said, you know what? The name will come to me. So one day I was on a trip to Aruba that wasn't planned. It was planned, but it wasn't planned that I was going to be in the middle of opening a real estate company at the same time. So I planned it, and then this happened.
Yeah.
So I said, let me take advantage of it. Let me just go. So in my relaxed mood on my way to the airport, in the airport, I start just getting these visions in my head, and I start saying, you know what? I love business terminology. I always like to include it in the names of my companies. And for some reason, I just kept hearing the new trend was all about what's the culture in your company? What's the culture in your company? And everybody kept talking about the culture in their company. And I said to myself, well, what if my culture in my company, because that was really important to me, that the culture was going to be different than everywhere else would I've ever worked, because I wanted it to be the environment that was going to attract people. So I said to myself, what if I just took the initiative of calling my company Culture? And it was just so foreign at the moment, but I was like, what do I call it? Culture Realtors, Culture Real Estate, Culture Group, what is it? Because I needed to sound awesome. So I wrote it down on paper, started playing with it, and I'm just like, okay, well, man, Culture Real Estate sounds cool, but it just sounds so the same as everyone else. It needs to be streamlined. So it dawned on me, I was like, wait, what if I took the real estate part out? The real part out and just left the state, Culture Estate. And then I said, all right, let's take Culture Estate, let's put a box around it, let's put a line in the middle. I was like, that's it. I think I literally wrote it down on a piece of paper on an airplane. And after that, dude, I called up Joelle, and I was like, Joelle, we got a name for the office. She's like, what is it? I'm like, Culture Estate. And she's like, what? Are you serious? I'm like, yeah, Culture Estate. She's like, cultural? I'm like, no, not cultural. Culture. She's like, what is that? I'm like, don't worry about what it is, but that's the name. And she was like, if you say so. She wasn't sold on it at all. And then she even asked me.
We're gonna have a talk with her.
Yeah, she even asked me at one point, "Are you sure? That's what?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm telling you, the name is gonna fly." Then when I jumped on Facebook, it didn't exist anywhere on Facebook. I jumped on Google, it didn't exist anywhere on Google. And I don't know if you noticed, it's really hard to find a name in the planet Earth that hasn't already been taken. So it wasn't taken. I went on, registered the names. I've even gone as far as carrying a trademark for the name now, and all our stuff's trademarked. So it's a really unique name. And, I'm glad I picked it, because now that I have picked it, I just see a lot of other companies following suit. I see, all types of culture, this culture, that now. But I'm just glad. I love the name. I don't think they could have ever been another name. I think this name was picked before I was even born. I think that's this name and I were meant to be. So, but I'm so excited about this company. I could talk about it forever. Like
I believe you.
yeah.
I believe you because like when people ask me about Culture State, I say the same thing. Like, you want to join a good real estate company? You want to join the best?
Yeah.
Like, pick one.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, that's a great attitude to have. I have the same attitude when it comes to talking about it. Some people may think we're boasting or bragging, but it's just like talking about your kid. Imagine, right? You have this child that you gave birth to and you see blossoming and you see so much potential. You're going to talk that kid up. It's the same way I feel about like our company. I feel like we birthed this thing, and everyone who's been here and helped us has been a part of it. So I just feel like it is worth, bragging about. And it's not bragging. It's just showing your pride is what I call it.
Yeah. Okay. So now, you've been doing this for a while, like 15 plus years.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've closed thousands of deals.
Yes.
Hundreds, thousands, whatever it was. Tell me about the best deal, or the one that stands out in your mind as probably your favorite, I guess you could say.
I guess the one that always stands out, that'll always be with me till probably I'll be telling people about this deal till the day I die, is the deal that I didn't make any money on this transaction, but I did save a family's house. And I started off by doing a short sale when nobody wanted to touch short sales. Nobody even knew what a short sale was. I was doing short sales. I started that a long time ago when the crash hit. So I was introduced to this family by a friend of mine who had been behind in their payments, and they couldn't keep making the mortgage on it every month. So I was going to try to do a short sale for them, but a family friend was going to buy it from them and allow them to stay in one of the units as a two-family, one of the units as a rental. Mm-hmm. So when that happened, the banks weren't like really set up to process short sales like they do now.
Yeah.
So it would take a very long time to get them done. So this particular one was a Wells Fargo deal, and it was just taking forever and forever and forever. And we didn't really know about sheriff sales that much back then, so I didn't know that there was a sheriff sale scheduled.
Yeah.
No one gave us any warning. So we worked on it for a long time, and then all of a sudden I get a call from a guy who says, "Hey, I just bought this house on a sheriff sale," and I said, "You have it listed?" And I said to him, "Yeah, it's one of our properties. I didn't know it was going to sheriff sale." So the guy says, "Well, I'll tell you what. My client, he'll sell it to your buyer if you still have the buyer." And I said, "Well, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do it, right?" So excited, thinking that he was going to give it to us for the same price that we had made an offer to the bank.
Yeah.
Boy, was I wrong. He was going to not honor that at all. So instead of like selling it to us for like $240 or $250, I forget what it was that we offered the bank. He came out with some outrageous number like $320 or something. It was just like a lot for that time. Yeah. So I said to him, "All right, well, let me see how this will blow over." So believe it or not, the buyers are like, "You know what? It's a special house, has meaning to the people involved, so we're gonna go for it." So when we went for it, it turns out that the bank underappraised it by like $50,000. It was like way off, or more. I don't even remember now. The important part of the story is the fact that it was gonna die, because the seller was like, "Well, if you can't get financing for it, we're gonna kick your people out. They're gonna go on the street." And they had 2 little girls, So that to me it was like really heart wrenching to see that they were gonna lose their house. Excuse me. They were gonna lose their house, and the kids were not gonna have like a place to live. So I said, I'm not gonna let that happen. I'm gonna figure out a way. So I had to come up with a solution, bro. I'm telling you, I didn't sleep. Like, this guy was harassing me. The seller was harassing me. He was such a jerk. Like, he was just like the worst person you could ever do business with. And it came to the point where I said, I got an idea. What if you give the buyer a second mortgage and you hold this mortgage on the property? So they said to me, all right, let me get back to you. So they talked it over, and they agreed to it. I talked to the mortgage company who was doing the loan for the buyer. They said they will allow it, a second mortgage on the property. I said, great. So we put the deal together, closed it, and I'm telling you, dude, to this day, I mean, that family's still in that house, and that's like over 10 years ago. Family's still in the house. The people still have that second mortgage on the home, still making money on it. So they must have already made like their money back, and everything now is probably like, the cherry on top. Yeah. So that was a win-win for those people involved. I didn't make any money, but I think the biggest recognition I can get is from knowing that family is still in that house, and the girls are all grown up now and stuff. So it's awesome, bro. I mean, that's what you do when you're in real estate. You put your clients before yourself, and I feel like all those things I've done, karma is definitely a real thing.
That's one thing that I really, really love about real estate, is the fact that you actually get to help people in a situation like that. And I just find it amazing, the fact that you actually got to help that family stay in that house. And it's 10 years later and they're still there. Yeah. And their kids actually got to grow up in that house and I just find that amazing.
Sure.
But now, I hear a lot of people say, or at least come up to me, and I'm sure you've heard it 100 times also, is people say to me all the time is that real estate, oh, you're in real estate, you must be crushing it, you must be making so much money doing this, like whatever it is. I don't think people realize how difficult it actually is. Tell us probably your craziest deal. Craziest deal, or worst deal, craziest, whatever you want to call it.
Okay. I mean, not everyone's going to take the same path in real estate. So I'll give you a quick scenario of two different paths that someone may take. So if you're working with buyers, you got to qualify them emotionally in the beginning. I actually had a problem saying no to people in the beginning, so I would say yes to everyone and just be a chauffeur. I showed this one gentleman so many houses. It literally took us 2 years before we bought a house.
Wow.
2 years. I hear everybody saying, a few months, a year. It literally took me 2 years to sell him something. That was the last buyer I ever worked with, and rightfully so, because I said I'm never going to let this happen again. It was incredible. It was draining. He had me all over Jersey. I mean, like all over Jersey. And then he ends up buying a house 10 minutes away in Kenilworth, and I was just like, oh my God. Like all that time we spent in different counties, and it was halfway across Jersey. It was nuts. But that was probably the worst and the experience probably with on the buyer side. And then on the listing side, I mean, I've had sellers. I had a seller. I mean, this is a crazy one. If you want to hear a crazy one, I had a seller who had an empty apartment, and his second floor. He had been trying to rent it for over 6 months, and he couldn't rent it. And he wanted to do a short sale. So he's like, I want to do a short sale, but I want to rent it while it's processing.
Yeah.
No problem. So he goes, can you rent it for me? I was like, yeah, of course. I went to go look at it. It was a dump, a disaster. So he says, I ain't got no money to fix it. I said, all right, if you don't have any money, I'll work something out with you. I told him, look, the security deposit is probably going to be 1 month security or a month and a half, whatever we decided. I said, you're going to get 1 month's rent, and you're going to get the security deposit from the tenant that comes in. Obviously, the 1 month rent is our commission.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I understand. So I said, look, the security deposit is going to have to go towards us as well. And then as you collect more money, you can put that away for their security, because you can't touch their security. So he's like, okay. So I said, that'll be our limit that we can use for the construction, so we can fix it up. My mistake, obviously, I learned too, was that you can't touch a tenant's security deposit for anything. You can't. What we should have done was had him pay us over the course of maybe the next 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
So what he did was, after we fixed his apartment, we rented it. It took us like 30 days to do it. He was so like ungrateful that he started like making threats and accusations, and it ended up being a nasty situation. But my biggest takeaway was that I knew I was right, because I spent my own money to help this guy, and he wasn't grateful for it. So I ended up having to go to court with him, with the mediation. I ended up having to pay him half the money back, which was like, dude, I'm like, you got the tenant, like I fixed your apartment, and I gave him $1,000 to go away. That's the way I saw it. But he made so much fuss that like he just wouldn't let it go. Like he just started creating more problems for me. So if I learned any lesson with that, it was that first of all, you never mess with any security deposits. Never ever touch someone's security deposit, even if the landlord's willing to give it to you, because that's what happened. And second of all, never fight with your clients, even if they're wrong. You never fight with them. You always yes them to death, and they have the last word. So I learned that pretty much the worst way you could. And I've never done it to this day. Even the client screaming at me, I just politely tell them thank you, and I'm sorry we couldn't work together, and just let it go. So that was probably one of the craziest things that ever happened to me. I had to literally go to court with this guy because he was so insane. But things happen. These things are out there.
Okay. Clearly, real estate is not as easy as a lot of people think.
Yeah.
What would be advice that you'd give to a first year agent? Someone just starting out, brand new in the business. A first year agent, you got to get with the right mentor. You got to get with the right office, the right group, the right anything, and just learn as much as you possibly can. And if you have any possibility to go full time, do it. I don't care if you gotta if you really want to be in real estate. I mean, if you want to do real estate as a hobby, as a part-time thing, this message is not for you. But if you really want real estate to be like your life and you want to succeed in it, you have to go full time into real estate.
you have to have faith and confidence in yourself that you can do it, and you have to find a side hustle. So you can't have real estate be your side hustle, but you could do real estate and Uber on the weekends. You could do real estate and cut hair at night. You could do real estate and hustle on eBay. Like, you could do all these things, but just make real estate your priority and get with the right mentors. That's the number one thing. After that, everything falls into place. Give it time. 6 months to a year, you won't even recognize what the hell you're doing anymore. It'll be a totally different lifestyle.
Okay. Now, book recommendation.
Oh yeah, books, absolutely. I hated reading as a kid. Never read because I never read the right books. So nothing ever captivated me. But as I got more involved into business, I learned how important books are, and I just started to take in as much as I possibly could from any which direction. My 2 favorite books that I've ever read for business would be, the number 1 book is The E-Myth, Revisited. That's an excellent book. That book really shaped the foundation, I think, of Culture State, along with a lot of other books I read prior to opening the office. And the second one, because I don't want to just give you the one, because I just recently read one that's going to probably be the next pivotal thing for Culture State. That book is called Traction. That book is amazing. I think that one is really kind of like eye-opening. It creates a lot of structure. The E-Myth kind of gives you a concept, a concept, kind of like mental shifts. But the Traction book actually gives you a blueprint. So that's what I like about, because I think I read it in the right order. If I would have Traction first, then the E-Myth, I probably wouldn't appreciate the E-Myth as much. But I read it in the right order, and that was just purely coincidence. So I do recommend that as a must read for anybody who's in business, real estate agents, anyone. E-Myth and then Traction. Those are great books. Okay.
So now, to wrap it up, I don't want to take too much of your time.
Sure.
I don't believe in New Year's resolutions, but I do believe in goals and having action plan behind it and holding yourself accountable to it.
Sure.
What is your goal for this year, for 2019? Something you want to achieve by the end of the year?
I actually have this stuff written down. I could take the time to put all this stuff down. It's so important. One of my goals for 2019 is 250 real estate agents under Culture State's brand. We're also going to open a second office in Hudson County this year. You know, God willing. All this stuff is obviously God first. Second office in Culture in Hudson County. Then the third one is obviously, you always have your financial goals.
Yeah.
Because in business, those are called like your projections. So, you know, I'm not big on sharing those numbers, but the number's pretty big. Bigger than I ever thought that I'd ever be able to make. And it puts a smile on my face, because, you know, you're talking to the kid who used to go window shopping with his dad, you know, because we couldn't afford anything. And you just, you know, I wore the same clothes every couple of days in school. So to see numbers this big on your horizon is just like, it's unreal, dude. I mean, but it just goes to show you that if I could do it, you know, a shy, chubby kid who never really was, you know, that accepted and very socially awkward at times, and I put my life in the trajectory I wanted it in and completely changed everything, anybody could do it. You just got to believe in what you really want and never take no for an answer.
Perfect. I love that.
Yeah, good.
So thank you again for your time. If you haven't heard of Culture Estate, you're doing something wrong. Check them out on YouTube. Check us out on YouTube. If you're ever interested in buying or selling, contact any agent here. Where can they find you on social media? Well,
everywhere on social media, every single platform, you'll find us under Culture Estate. And I just want to congratulate you, Derick, on not only, you know, this podcast, but on your whole mind shift. I've seen a lot of transformation from you from the day I met you. You know, you totally went against the grain with what your parents wanted you to do with the traditional education system, and you saw a lot more opportunity and something you have a passion for. So that's really difficult for most people to do, because obviously, you know, you always want to make your parents happy. But I think one day when you're, you know, taking care of your parents and they're retired, I think they'll be very happy with your decision.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
No worries.
So thank you again for your time. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe. There's a couple other, we've had this problem before. Notifications and like the video. There you go. Like the video.
Tell your sister, tell your cousin, tell a friend.
Yes.
Tell a friend, but tell a friend.
Thank you for joining us.
All right. Thanks, man.